Welcome to the Oscoda Township regular board meeting, June 11th, 2018. We've already started the meeting at 5:45, had our call to order, pledge of allegiance, roll call, and our closed session. The next item up is agenda additions. Does anyone have any agenda additions or changes? Okay, I need a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Support.
Motion by Mr. Cummings, support by Mr. Gajewski. All in favor say aye.
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 All opposed? The agenda is set. Next is our public comment period. This is the first one. There's a 4-minute time limit for this first one. There's a requirement to fill out a card and turn it into the superintendent. Do we have any cards?
We do. I have 4 cards this evening, and the first is Mark Miller regarding the community or the Michigan Rail Conference.
All right. When you come up to the podium, please introduce yourself.
Evening. My name's Mark Miller. I live on base. Just 3 general public interest things. There's a group called Community 02, and what they're doing is they're reaching out to seniors. I just found out about this last week, and tomorrow I'm going up to their meeting up in Gaylord. This one here, Michigan Tech University is having their annual rail conference in August. It's going to be down at Saginaw Valley State University. One item of interest is on the excursion, the field visits day. They're doing a round trip from Saginaw to Grayling. That's about 200 miles. Unfortunately, the track on our section up to Alpena does not currently meet the passenger rail standards. And then the last thing is in April, I went down to the Bay Future annual report. I basically follow Bay Future and the Crawford Grayling Economic Development Community. And this is the second year I've been there, and their report's pretty impressive. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next.
The second comment card I have is from Arnie LaRich concerning the Mike TV contract.
Arnie LaRich, co-chair of the community side of the Restoration Advisory Board, and I'm an Oscoda resident. I want to thank again a big vote of thanks to the Township Board for the videoing and broadcasting, and both are important, of the RAD meetings, the last 2. And we got some numbers. The live attendance on there was over 54. There was one from Algiers and one from Faroe Island, but I think they were only on for a few seconds maybe. But over almost 1,800 hours of viewing occurred that night by people. That was pretty impressive. The contract that's in the for your consideration this evening, I think from the agenda, is has 3 types of meetings and the costs and the equipment and all that. But as I'm trying to look forward to see how much it would cost to have MIC-TV have put on another broadcasting in the future at this facility especially, which is a township facility, I'm having difficulty finding the specifics to be able to estimate that. But I can talk further with the township about that. But what I'm wondering is, and maybe in your discussion of this contract, when the PEG or the franchise fee that you discussed, your board discussed during the winter, there was a draft use of those monies. And a fourth category was in there, and it said something to the effect of other township municipal meetings, and such as a RAB was one example. I would like to also throw in there the possibility that the airport board might want at some point some project coming up where they want it broadcast so more of the public could see their board meetings. And that's a very small room, and it would cost much less to do it here than to move cameras and everything over there, plus it'd be bigger, better quality. So those kind of looking forward to the community and how this facility and what you've started here, which is a great thing and capability in our township, I'm wondering what happened to that other meetings. There's no way that I can estimate from here what the cost would be for the next one to put it on. And also with the equipment that's purchased by the town and also used by the team here, I'm just wondering how that might work in the future. And I was wondering if the contract might ask MICTV to actually put that fourth category in there with some cost numbers to put on another broadcast at this facility. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Next, I have Kathy Worcesterbarth concerning the water contamination House bill and the Mike TV contract.
More signs. Hi there, Kathy Worcesterbarth, 211 Evergreen Avenue. I wanted to actually bring some really good news for a change on our water contamination. I think most of us were at the town hall meeting, I think it was 2 years ago, when Senator Stamas asked an official at the U.S. Air Force if there was a law that required the U.S. Air Force to provide municipal water supply to affected areas, would the U.S. Air Force do that and pay for it? And what was the answer?
No. Well, if the law said that they had to, then they would do it.
As long as it didn't
That's correct.
discriminate.
They said yes, we would do it. Okay. So that Stamas, our state senator, he went out and he wrote a law. Unfortunately, the wording was not sufficient to actually move forward to become a law. But the good news is the bill that I just passed out to you, House Bill 6099, was just introduced into the House last week. And if you look at the representatives that introduced it, there is one name missing that I would really like to see on there, and that is Representative Aller. Now, she came here last week and she talked about all of the wonderful things that she's doing in terms of educating herself and her constituents about PFAS, and I really, really appreciate that. And she's submitted some House resolutions, right, that look great. They have some really great things in them. We want the studies released, you know, those sorts of things. But those don't have any teeth. Those are not going to provide us municipal water. This House bill will. So I'm encouraging everybody to contact Representative Aller and demand that she support this bill. Right now, it's in committee. She has the ability to call the committee chair and request that this be supported and this be moved through the committee so that it can be reintroduced to the House and voted upon. And then from there on, of course, we're going to request Stamas and any affected senators that have affected areas in Michigan to support the bill once it goes into the Senate. And then we're going to get closer to having municipal water provided by the U.S. Air Force. And then the next thing I'd like to mention is what Arnie was talking about with the televising the RAB meetings. Those people that are watching those RAB meetings, he talked about numbers. Aller's one of them. Our state representative, people that cannot get to these meetings are watching those, this RAB meeting is actually a very important process for these people in the rest of the state to be able to see that, and they just can't make it here on a Wednesday, evening. So it is very important that those meetings continue to be televised, and I hope you include that in that agreement that you're looking at tonight. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Next.
I have Terry McKelly talking about the invitation to the Lions Rotary Community Picnic on the 4th of July.
I am Terry Michaelis, 5102 Riverbend Court, and a member of Oscoda Rotary. I'm coming with an invitation to the board to attend the community picnic that both service clubs are sponsoring on the 4th of July. It is, I think it's our 4th annual one for our community of families. It is we are nonprofits, but we do this there is no money made. Sometimes it costs us a little bit. But it starts at 5 o'clock on the 4th of July, and we provide at cost, hot dogs are 50 cents. What can I say? Potato chips are 50 cents. Pop is 50 cents. Almost everything is 50 cents, including the Rice Krispie treats. So families come. It is affordable. If you've never been down to one, there's games for children. We run and they get tattoos and glow sticks and all kinds of stuff to start the ramp up for the 4th of July parade. So I know that Mary Reitler, a Rotarian, she sent a letter asking for permission. I think it's on your agenda tonight.
Yes.
We always ask. And it is a grand kickoff for the 4th fireworks. So please come if you've never been down. And I brought the invitation and pass it out to you. Starts at 5 o'clock.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And if there's any questions, I'd be glad to answer them because it's on your agenda.
Thank you.
All right.
If I may, Kathy, your issue about the law or the bill that was worked on but didn't work. I called Senator Thomas's office twice and let him know that unless the wording of that bill said anybody that messes with the ground and the water, not just the Air Force. And apparently they just ignored that and just wrote it for the Air Force. Ford Motor Company, General Motors, Dow Chemical, the bill's got to include all kinds of private industry, and they were warned. So, I don't know whether they just ignored it or they wanted to write a bill that wasn't going to work, but they could talk about it. So.
Okay, then on to the consent agenda. We have, for the minutes, if there's any comments regarding the special meeting minutes of May 11th, regular meeting minutes of May 14th, and the special meeting minutes of May 31st. Next, regarding finance for payment of bills of $496,075. Down in reports, we have for the SAW grant updates, the GIS component, the 2018 water main project update, and the MIC TV contract agreement. Any comments?
I would just like to make one comment about the SAW grant update. Part of that, one of the items that was listed in there under the inspection of the pipeline, in order to inspect that pipeline and televise, put a television camera down through our sewer pipeline, which is, there's many miles of pipeline for that sewer. Before they could do the inspection, they had to remove a little over 73 tons of grease and solid material from the linings of that pipe. The amount of money that is appropriated for the televising and cleaning is approximately $327,000. Now, I don't think there's ever been an example, better example of the idea of out of sight, out of mind than sewer lines. And the idea that they removed 73 tons of substance that shouldn't have been in the sewer lines in the first place. So the point I'd like to make to everyone here and everybody watching is that please be careful of what you put into the sewer, because, like I said, it's out of sight, out of mind, until somebody goes to flush their toilet and it doesn't go down. And then there's a big problem. And when we have these kinds of things that are found in there, that's an expense. We work to try and keep the cost of the water and the sewer rates as low as possible. When we have to expend, these kinds of monies to maintain that system, we need some help from everybody, all the users of that system. So that number jumped out at me when I was going through that report, and I just wanted to make a comment on that. Thank you.
Aaron, the third item, the MIC-TV contract, third line in the narrative says the discussions initially focused on economics, but now have incorporated additional provisions. Can you refresh me on what these additional provisions are that are non-economic?
Mr. Cummings was part of that committee.
Yes, I can. Remember, we were going from the initial $200 per meeting fee
Yeah.
and trying to help make this something which they could actually pay for, because ultimately their costs were exceeding the $200 per meeting. The other was that pre-negotiating the rates for certain items, like let's say cameras or staff. We were trying to get to a point of pre-negotiating rates for in a kind of a la carte menu, and then also providing the cost for individual menus for certain venues, like the board, for example, versus the Board of Review or the zoning board, these other forums, and what those would cost. So to the point that was raised earlier, and not to just take a segue for a moment, to the point that was asked earlier about what was the cost of, let's say, a RAB meeting. The RAB meeting is calculatable from the contract that we have on the board table this evening, because you can look at what it is we're looking to have at a meeting and determine what the costs would be by adding up the individual parts. They just aren't grouped as a family dinner on the menu. So that's the economic part of it was, as I said, the $200 initially, but then the other considerations were just all the additional detail that was found in that agreement that went into pre-negotiating costs. And also, finally, it is economic, but it's slightly different than what I think you...
I think everything you've said is economic.
Well, in a sense, yes, but it's, again, the first economy was the cost that we were paying them.
Mm-hmm.
After that, it was trying to figure out what we were going to pay after that. And the other points were there was equipment that they purchased and needed to transfer to us for ownership. So again, yes, true, it is economic, but it's just a matter of kind of tying up some loose ends that have accumulated over this protracted $200 a meeting relationship.
So the draft document, it says, will be available for consideration on or before Monday evening. Has that come to pass or not? Mr. Supervisor? Do we have that agreement?
It is a draft agreement right now, and we are hopeful to finalize with Mike TV, so that as of right now, all the articles are agreeable.
So maybe next meeting we'll have that to look at?
Correct.
Okay.
Am I mistaken? Is there a draft in the board packet tonight?
There is.
Yes.
Okay.
Page 49.
Okay, I don't know if that's...
Okay.
And just one other question, Mr. Cummings, to Mr. DeWitch's point about calculating would the broadcasting of the RAB be the approximate same cost as broadcasting our meetings, or roughly the same length and time would be $1,180 per meeting?
Yeah, no, it wasn't. It was less. I think there was, I don't remember what the cost was that we approved in the last, what was it,
Well,
a couple of meetings ago?
The previous ones, I think, were $700 or $750.
It has to do with the staff and the number of cameras, the amount of equipment that they're doing. We actually have additional equipment here in this room for these meetings, which we
Okay.
don't need for the RAB meeting. For example, there's a specific camera on that wall that is focused primarily on that time clock. We don't use that for the RAB meeting.
Right,
And
okay.
that's all equipment which we pay a small amount
Okay.
for.
All right.
And the difference between televising the planning commission and the zoning board of appeals, $900 for the planning commission, $680 for the board of appeals, zoning appeals.
That is,
And that is because of length of the meetings? What is the reason for the disparity?
Mr. Palmer's information. Oh, you're talking about the pricing?
The price,
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
$900 for the planning commission, $680 for the zoning appeals meeting.
you and I were on the same committee, Jim.
Yeah,
I don't recall. I don't recall either.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, any other comments?
Yes, about the ZBA and planning commission meetings, I had mentioned Friday morning at the work session to all of you, so it'll be a bit redundant, but I still, just so I'm clear, everyone's clear on my point in this whole, situation, is I'd still like to see the ZBA and planning commission meetings broadcast. And as I mentioned Friday, I know there were some hesitations, and Mr. Palmer, you brought it up to the planning commission and discussed it, and it was voted on actually, and not, and voted against. And I mentioned I'd had some conversations with some planning commission members that centered around cost and whatnot. If there's any way we can discuss that and try and work out, I'd like to, because I think it's valuable for the community, and I think it's potentially valuable. It would be valuable for me. So just again, clarifying where I stand in all this. So in a few months, if I'm going on about it, you guys, it's not a surprise to anyone.
You want to discuss that now, or?
I don't, I mean, sure, if anyone sees any more to discuss than what I just outlined, other than making you all aware of my intent. I believe Friday we talked about maybe bringing it up at a budgeting work session.
Okay.
And that's fine with me. It just,
When you first started here tonight, I thought you were going to say, let's just mandate that they should be televised.
I'd like a more amicable approach if I could.
But since the horse was let out of the barn on this topic, I wouldn't mind saying that the idea of televising these meetings isn't meant to punish the people at these desks. It is meant for transparency. It's meant for bringing this to people's homes. Because as every time we bring this up, and it was so adroitly stated earlier tonight, the public can't always make it. And whether it's because the viewer is infirmed, or whether the person says, a transportation issue, or whatever, you've got a situation where they still need to be able to see and find out. And I think it's been really valuable. And since we've been able to pass the additional tax from charter for us to offer this service and do it in a professional manner, to be able to bring that cost in, that money in, so we can pay the cost of McTV to do this, I think we should take advantage of it. That's just my opinion. So.
Well, I would agree with Mr. Doherty, and I brought it up at the Planning Commission. I was in favor of having the Planning Commission meetings televised. I think it would be, of value to the community. But realistically, one of the concerns of a number of the Planning Commission members was how the cost, if it would be taken out of the Planning Commission budget.
Yep.
And since the zoning and planning has a fairly limited budget to begin with, a number of members were not really in favor of spending that money out of that budget to make that happen. So that's why it was was actually turned down by a majority of the planning commission members. I still believe it would be a valuable thing to have. If there's some way to work out so that the cost is not taken out of the planning zoning budget, then that might alleviate the problem, but I couldn't guarantee that, so I don't know.
I can't speak for Mr. Byer or anyone else on the board, but during the conversations with McTV, it was never envisioned in my mind that these costs that are being discussed would ever come from the budgets of individual departments.
Correct. Correct. That's my understanding, that we would,
Thank you.
from the revenues we're getting from the new pricing on cable TV, that's what we were gonna do with it. You know, something different, something unique that
Yes.
isn't being done, and it wouldn't be taken out of planning commission budget
Right,
or ZBA.
that's right. Yep.
Well, I will
So,
pass that information along.
yeah, so if you can re-engage the planning and ZBA boards, and then we can generate a budget for it and have it outlaid in our next budget work session. Does that sound good?
And then final thing, to follow up, you raised the point of the benefit that the broadcast is here, and we've been
Right.
limited to YouTube for some time now. I just would look forward to the day that we broadcast again, and looking to figure out when that day will be, follow up on that.
Yeah, there's a couple of points. It has nothing to do with contract or money or anything like that. It has to do with just a matter of getting the work done with Charter and the vendor and getting things hooked up to the equipment that's at Township Hall. But yeah, it's it isn't being dragged slower as a point. I mean,
No,
we'll get
certainly,
it as quickly
certainly.
as we can. Yeah.
Yep.
And I feel like I've been kind of, well, I feel like I've spoken a lot about their contract, and I'm by no means a representative for McTV, but I feel strongly about the topic and being able to bring this service to the community. So I feel like that's why I was on the committee, and so it was Mr. Byer for the same reason, I think. So, but that's it. Oh, there was one other thing I was trying to recall. You're bringing this whole thing up. That the concern about whether or not the item of the RAB specifically as a type of video service, not specifically being in the contract, is neither an oversight nor a limitation to the contract, because the way this contract was set up was that we could ask for anything at any point. That was the reason why we pre-negotiated individual costs. So we can add anything or change frequency or anything like that. That's not a concern, as long as we give them enough notice. That's it. Thank you.
All right, and then on the water main project, there is a placeholder there regarding the bids. A formal bid sheet came out earlier today. I did send it to everybody, but I do know that everybody can't get to their emails at any point during the day. What we've gotten in for bids, the lowest bidder is MacArthur Construction. And I'll clarify here, this is for the Phase 1 water main extension that will go down Vannet and Dam Road, Forest Drive, and put in a meter pit for Rose Lane. The lowest bid on this contract for construction is $292,270. That is MacArthur Construction out of the Hillman-Alpena area. The next bidder was Schaff and Associates from Tawas. Their bid was $311,582. The bid above that was Caterman Trucking out of Hale. Their bid was $316,177.50. And the high bidder was John Henry Excavating out of Tawas at $369,865. We have never used MacArthur Construction, so I did some asking around, and they did come highly recommended by some of the communities further north of us. So in light of that, so that we can move this project along, my recommendation would be for MacArthur Construction, especially since the bid amount is, oh, I don't know, what is that? Do my math here. 15,000 lower. So, does anybody have any comments regarding that?
Are they under construction right now anywhere?
Is who?
MacArthur.
MacArthur?
That I don't know. The deadline for the project is October 25th. So we're looking at $19,000 difference between the lowest bidder and the second lowest. Either way, all the work will, or a portion of the work will at least be done open cut for an area on Bissonnet Road where there's a situation where a property line's too close for them to be able to do a bore. So they'll do an open cut to install that line and be able to get around the sewer line that's on the other side of the road. Because the main is on the farthest side from the neighborhoods and the sewer's on the closest side.
We're taking action on this tonight, correct?
So we can expedite this,
Absolutely.
we should.
It's all right with me.
I move we go with MacArthur's bid a little bit.
I support that.
Motion by Mr. Byer, support by Mr. Palmer. Roll call?
Mr. Nordine, yes. Mr. Palmer?
Yes.
Ms. McGuire?
Yes.
Mr. Byer?
Yes.
Mr. Cummings?
Yes.
Mr. Gasky?
Yes.
Mr. Weed?
Yes. Motion's passed. All right, any other comments on the consent agenda? Then I need a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll move.
Support.
Motion by Ms. McGuire, support by Mr. Gasky. Roll call?
Mr. Palmer?
Yes.
Mr. Byer?
Yes.
Ms. McGuire?
Yes.
Mr. Cummings?
Yes.
Mr. Gasky?
Yes.
Mr. Nordine, yes. Mr. Weed?
Yes, motion is passed. Next, subcommittee reports and project updates. First I have on here is an update for the RAB meeting held June 6th.
Okay, so at the RAB meeting last Wednesday, the Air Force presented a slide deck, of which this was one of the slides, and it spoke of a couple of different topics. I had actually prepared responses to them, those two items, but the first one being work stoppage due to access easements, and the other, the township approval of manhole construction on the storm water line. And the township was not permitted to make a statement at the meeting because we didn't have a slide deck that preceded the cutoff date for content. So since these were topics that came up that literally the morning of, a number of us were asking about these topics, I'll give the updates to you now. So the first one here regarding the work stoppage on the easements. So the easements pertain to the lines running between the GAC plant and the extraction curtains. So these are the curtains that are underground that are used to filter out or to extract the contamination, move it out, and then ultimately that water be filtered in the GAC plant. The easement agreement needs to be between the Airport Authority, the Road Commission, and Oscoda Township. Because at some point that line crosses any one of these jurisdictions. So Township here tonight will vote on this particular topic, and the other agencies will take care of this at their meetings later this month. I think one of them is this week, on Thursday. So that's that. The next item having to do with the access agreement for the manhole and storm sewer. So that we're in, the statement here is that we're in legal discussions with the Air Force, and we're not allowed to disclose details at this time. Not a lot of information, but you just need to know that we are discussing it. And I also wish to point out that I had written a letter, an email, to the facilitator of the RAB meeting, Tim, and Mr. Mars, the co-chair for the Air Force. And I had wanted to discuss with them the topics that were that Mr. Mars mentioned to me, not after this last meeting, but the one prior in April. And I just wanted to let you know that I had, these are the topics. I'll give you some of the background on it. Here's my little statement here. After the last RAB meeting, Mr. Mars spoke to me about a couple of issues. The first was the Air Force's intent not to remediate Clark's Marsh. The other topic was the Air Force's belief that the that PFAS was emanating from the wastewater treatment plant on the old base. When the MDEQ has already shown that the signature of the contamination actually matches AFFF, they were trying to insinuate that the PFAS emanating was somehow related to contamination that sometimes occurs in municipal water treatment facilities. But we have information from MDEQ that shows that that's not the case, and Mr. Mars was saying that they had FOIA'd information from MDEQ and were not given that map or that information, and I contended that that claim was incorrect, false, and I followed it up with the email, knowing how FOIA works here and elsewhere, and being familiar a little bit with the email and litigation. I basically said I'm going to put an email out there, and I copied Mr. Mars and the moderator, Tim, and Mr. Delaney from MDEQ, and our superintendent and our supervisor. So somewhere along the way, anything of this could be FOIA'd from any one of our emails. And to make sure that this was requested by Mr. Delaney to be supplied to the Air Force, to make absolute certain that this information was requested and shared. So I wanted to share that with you tonight.
All right, next one I have is Oscoda Community Center update. For you.
That's back to me again. All right, so as I've mentioned in a couple prior meetings, we're going to have a report from the subcommittee, which we will be receiving next meeting, and we can vote on, review, I should say. It's going to provide us information, which we have asked of the OCC committee about 16 months ago when we formed them. They were to advise us about what we could do in order to handle financial gaps. It costs us a lot more to run the OCC than it does than the money we actually generate from it, but we don't want to close it, so we wanted to look for solutions, and this committee was created for that purpose. So during that time, a substantial survey last summer was created, and a rather substantial analysis of the results was created. I primarily wrote those results. That's about a 130-page document, and I will be having a copy of that report presented to the board here, Township Hall for record and for press. It'll provide you a great deal of information about the detail about the survey. So between that report and the report coming from the subcommittee themselves, we'll have a picture of what it is we've accomplished for the last year and months. And then I will actually tell you at that point, I would like to review that subcommittee be considered, do we close it as a subcommittee and allow it to be reformed as a Friends of the OCC committee, and something not officially through the township. So we've been carrying the burden of the officialness of that subcommittee by having our superintendent prior to you and the clerk's office attending every meeting. That was that. That's the update on that.
All right, next one here is for the Oscoda Wordsmith Airport Authority update. To let everybody know, the runway is going to be resurfaced this summer. That's going to start soon. Pride Road, which follows along back behind the alert facility, construction work began on that, I believe, about 2 weeks ago. And I also went on a road trip around the airport with the airport director and discussed what situation was happening with every facility on there and what kind of capital improvements need to be made. So that will be further discussed at some other airport meetings. Hopefully we can have a good report put out to our board to let everybody know exactly what's going on with that. But they had a very good identification process. I'm sure you've been through it before, Jim, when you were on the board. Very good identification process as to what the needs are for
Right.
all the infrastructure on the airport. I got a bit of news right before the meeting. On May 9th, I sent a letter out to a bunch of our legislators and asking for funding for a water main project. In one of those items, I asked that either the state or the federal government fund service line connections for the Phase 1 part of the project. Right now, the project only consists of putting mains through these areas. And I requested $325,000 to complete that. The notice I got today is that the state has preliminarily approved that $325,000, and that has to go before the governor. There is a chance it could be vetoed, not itself, but because of the package that it's within. But other than that, that's a big achievement on our part to make sure that those people get connected to the lines.
Yes.
And I'll be working further on Phase 2. We need 1.6 million for the Loud Road and Woodland Drive water main extension, plus an additional $650,000 for service line connections.
Is that service line funding dedicated to Oscoda Township?
That is dedicated to us specifically.
Very good.
Our Phase
Nice.
1.
Well done.
Yes, thank you. Thank you to the legislature.
Yes, thank you, Sue Aller, for your help with that. She did have a part in making sure that she got that for us.
It's awesome.
All right, then on to the reports. First is USDA Farm Market Grant Documentation Requirements.
Okay, so last week the representatives of the townships and the DDA met with the USDA grant representative, and the focus of that meeting was to provide an update on the progress of the the farm market project and discuss the project closeout. So your packet this evening contains the unsigned SF 425s, which are the quarterly federal financial reports detailing the funds spent on the grant project. So, based on our conversation at the work session last Friday, I do not have clarification on the line G of 425 at this point. I do not have that. I will bring to your attention that this needs to be closed out by we have a deadline of June 30th to be able to have everything closed out with the USDA on this project. So.
Okay, any comments? Does anybody want to make a motion?
I don't know that we can have a motion until the documents are correct.
Okay, so we're going to wait on that then?
I think we would have to.
All right, then I make a motion, we postpone this item until the next meeting.
Will that give us enough time?
Yeah, so the next meeting's scheduled for the 25th. I will try to get that information out well in advance of, our work session, and so we get a better clarification when I hear back from USDA grant representative. I will get that out, but yes, that would be of urgent nature at the next meeting to be able to get that.
It only
through.
gives us a few days to get it to them,
Correct.
but if it goes email, we're all set.
Correct.
Don't want to be late.
No.
Yeah, if there was an abundance of concern about that, we could do it contingent upon once those two things get fixed. Just a thought.
So can we vote on this in the next meeting, 14 days from now, even if you don't have that information yet?
I will make it a point to get you that information or some sort of clarification on that line G and why 2 + 2 does not equal 4.
Yeah. We're halfway to June 30th.
Correct. All right.
Is there support for the motion?
I'll support that.
Support.
Motion by Mr. Weed, support by Mr. Byer. Roll call?
Mr. Gasky,
Yes.
Ms. McGuire,
Yes.
Mr. Cummings,
Yes.
Mr. Byer,
Yes.
Mr. Nordine, yes, Mr. Palmer,
Yes.
Mr. Weed.
Yes, motion's passed. Next item is the federal interest.
Okay, so this was also discussed on the meeting, on the first item. The USDA grant representative affirmed the requirement of the township and DDA boards to sign the notice of federal interest that was included in your packet. The township was the applicant on the USDA farm market grant, and by signing the notice of federal interest, this would consent to the placement of a lien on the property title. And what was attached in the packet was from the assessor's office. Once the township board authorizes the notice of federal interest, the same motion would be requested of the DDA board tomorrow. So in the packet, you had the notice of federal interest as well as the legal description of the property from the assessor's office. So if there's any questions about that.
Did you get a sense that this federal interest form is common practice?
That was all provided when the township was applied for the grant.
Okay.
Yeah, so we're obligated to this.
Yeah.
Any other comments?
I would note for the record that the chairman of the DDA board is in attendance here tonight, Mr. Maxwell.
All right, is there a motion?
I'll make a motion that we authorize the supervisor to sign the notice of federal interest. Contingent upon the DDA, obviously.
Motion by Ms. McGuire, support by Mr. Gasky. Roll call?
Mr. Byer,
Yes.
Mr. Gasky,
Yes.
Ms. McGuire,
Yes.
Mr. Cummings,
Yes.
Mr. Palmer,
Yes.
Mr. Nordine, yes, Mr. Weed.
Yes, motion's passed. Next, USDA revolving loan fund grant.
This was associated with the $30,000 from the USDA to establish a revolving loan fund to provide means and opportunities to assist local small businesses to retain employment or create employment, and that was associated with helping with the storefronts. Since the grant money, since the $30,000 was awarded, there has not been any activity with that, and the USDA is asking that we de-obligate those funds, and they are going to move forward with that de-obligation of funds.
Any comments?
How much is involved? I mean, some of it has been spent, right? No?
No.
Didn't we come up with loans for storefront improvement?
That was a different,
Different? Okay,
Yeah, this one didn't get utilized.
all right.
It's $30,000, I believe, isn't it? To be canceled.
Correct.
And do we know the reasons it didn't get utilized?
I don't know.
I believe it was from when they first started talking about the farm market. It was one that they applied for in the very beginning, and then it had evolved over time, and they applied for something else, I believe. It might be, speak to Joe, he might know more details.
Do you know more details on that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Can you go to the podium, please?
We did one storefront improvement and the DDA financed it by itself. It was a grand total of $65,000. It was loaned out, not loaned, but given in grants to local businesses or even housing in the DDA district if they wanted to do a paint job. There was a limit on how much they had to turn the plan in, it had to be checked, and it was storefront improvement for anything else. It was a total of $65,000 the first time. We did it again, I think it was 30. We were gonna do it again. We never did because the farm market came along and we spent all our attention on that. Didn't want to go through the work of doing the improvements again. So we never used the money. It's just.
So this is a different iteration of the facade grant program that wasn't,
Yes.
okay, okay.
Yeah. It was a further one, and they were willing to put up the money, but we never did anything with
Okay.
it.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other comments? Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion, we execute the cancellation of the USDA grant for $30,000.
Support.
Motion by Mr. Gieske, support by Ms. McGuire. Roll call?
Ms. McGuire,
Yes.
Mr. Cummings,
Yes.
Mr. Gieske,
Yes.
Mr. Nordine, yes, Mr. Palmer,
Yes.
Mr. Byer,
Yes.
Mr. Weed.
Yes, motion's passed. Next, barrier-free swing location.
You will see in your packet, the planning consultant suggested two of the locations on the Oscoda Beach Park for the barrier-free swing set. And a request for input was made in the email communication. So that map identifying the two suggested locations were what was provided in your packet.
Dave, I should know this, but could you give us a little detail? What is a barrier-free swing?
So the barrier-free swing, as I understand it, is the ability for handicapped individuals in a wheelchair to be able to get in and out of a swing set.
Mr. Tasher, would you be willing to speak a little more detail on that?
Yes, the barrier-free swing set was an idea that was brought up from the, to the Oscoda Lions Club through the Alpena Lions Club. They built a barrier-free swing set, and what it is, it has a ramp you take down, you can put a wheelchair up on it, close the ramp up, lock the wheelchair down. There's a station across, it's more like a glider, where people can sit on the other side, and it's a mechanism that allows them to swing. The Lions would be very, would like to build this for Oscoda Township as one of our projects at the beach park, and I think you had a design that came to you a while back. So that's what a barrier-free is. So they can wheel right up into it, lock in, swing, and then get right out without any means of stopping them from doing that. So.
Is there any work the township will have to do if we put this in?
The Oscoda Lions Club will finance the whole thing. We'll build it. We'll pay for a cement pad that I guess the DPW would install to whatever, and the Lions Club will pay for it.
That's very nice.
Thank you.
Bob, we have these two location options, and one of them is a little further away from the parking lot, and if we choose that one, personally, it's my favorite, but do you think some kind of signage out near where the cars park indicating we have a barrier-free swing should be part of this package?
It will be quite obvious if it's visible what it is.
Yeah, but again, one of them is a little further, a little closer to the water,
Yes,
further away from the cars.
yes. We prefer the ones closer to the parking lot because it allows them actually, there wouldn't be, it's more difficult to get a wheelchair down, so there would be added expense getting into the swing area. That was our considerations for that, but either site would work, so.
Yeah,
Signage, guiding people to it would be appreciated.
Yeah. Okay.
yeah, it was brought up at our Lions board meeting last Thursday, and the consensus of the board was they would prefer to have it at the primary location that the landscape architect had by the parking area. And I have a side comment to this swing that I just learned about today. Rick Farabee, who is a member of our Lions Club, whose father passed away a little while ago, they've been looking, they want to put a memorial bench, one of the benches that we have at the beach park. And one of the difficulties they've been having is trying to locate where they would like to have it at the beach park. And when they learned about this swing, they said, well, they thought that would be a perfect spot to place this bench, near that swing. The Lions Club is going to donate some money towards the cost of that bench, and the Farabee family will pick up the balance of the cost of that bench. And so they would like to they thought that would be a good spot to have that. And just for information, the Farabee family have been in Oscoda a long time. My understanding is that the senior Farabee owned a furniture store here.
Yes.
Where Tate's Restaurant is currently located.
Oh, wow.
So it's been some years ago. But he was also a Lions member. So that's just a sidebar that was brought to my attention this afternoon, and I believe the Farabee family, Rick probably, he's had some surgery, so he's been laid up here for the last couple of months, but I'm sure he'll be into the township to discuss this a little further. But
You can direct them my way. I'm handling benches.
okay, all right.
I would like to add just one more thing also. The location that we would like it by the parking area is because it's also in view of the splash pad area. It's close to that. And under the park's design through your, that you have in the map of that in the offices there, it shows a possible expansion of that splash pad. And that's something the Lions Club would be very interested in also for the future. So just as a note, that's one of the things why we also like that location. So.
And you're concerned about the other site because it would be harder to get to?
It would be a little bit harder to get to, not as visible. But if that's where you guys want it, we're good with that.
Well, I'm just the individual here thinking that if I was using this swing, what would I rather see? The water and people on the boardwalk, the beach, or a bunch of screaming kids? How about that for bias? But the bench near it, wherever it goes, because most handicapped people are not going to be alone. They would have other family members or friends with them, and be a place for them to sit. So.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, any other comments?
My only comment is it's tough decision for the placement, tough to conceptualize what's in the plan for me, and I see the pluses and minuses. I see the benefit of the water, like I get the draw there, but I also see the benefit of putting it near the parking lot and near the playground too, because grandparents watching grandchildren or parents watching children, things of that nature. So it's tough. I don't know, just tough. Good problem to have though. So.
Yeah, I'd prefer to see it near the parking lot. We do have handicapped children that I'm sure would appreciate a swing near the splash pad.
Certainly.
Anything else? Is there a motion?
I move to accept the barrier-free swing and from the Lions Club and locate it at the preferred location from our, I always forget their name, from our Beckett and Rader consultants.
Is there support?
Support.
With that preferred location being,
The one closest to the
oh, they did
parking lot.
designate.
Yeah.
The alternate is the, okay,
Yes,
very
they
good.
did.
I'm sorry to interrupt.
That's cool, yeah, that's fine.
Motion by Mr. Cummings, support by Mr. Palmer. Roll call?
Mr. Cummings,
Yes.
Ms. McGuire,
Yes.
Mr. Gasky,
Yes.
Mr. Palmer,
Yes.
Mr. Nordine, yes, Mr. Byer.
Well, I'm thankful for the monetary contributions of the Service Club, and both locations are certainly acceptable, but I like the other one, so I'm a no on this. So.
Mr. Weed,
Yes. Motion's passed. Thank you to the Rotary and the Lions Club for everything you do for us.
Very much, yeah.
Next item is the John Henry contract.
Okay, on the John Henry contract, John Henry Excavating, the board accepted the proposal to perform a bore and tap under Cedar Lake Road to establish water service for a new development. The contract was for $18,900 to be completed, for the work to be completed by July 31st of 18. Because of the financial commitment involved, it was deemed advisable to establish a signed contract agreement for the board's consideration, and that was included in your packet.
Any comments?
What is the new development that this is, for which this is needed?
Mr. Palmer has information.
It's the assisted living, the new assisted living facility on Cedar Lake Road across from the old.
Extreme south end of Cedar Lake?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
all right, thank you.
Anything else? Is there a motion?
Yes, I'll move that the township supervisor and clerk sign the contract as executed by the contractor.
Support.
Motion by Mr. Byers, support by Ms. McGuire. Roll call?
Ms. McGuire,
Yes.
Mr. Cummings,
Yes.
Mr. Byer,
Yes.
Mr. Nordine, yes, Mr. Gasky,
Yes.
Mr. Palmer,
Yes.
Mr. Weed.
Yes, motion's passed. Next, preliminary plan for F41 street lighting.
All right. The board was previously requested a preliminary plan for the F41 street lighting from Consumers Energy, and you will see in your packet a diagram for the attached street lighting, and obviously, if deemed necessary, consideration could be given to seeking input from the township engineer as to the layout, sufficiency of the lighting on that diagram.
Any comments?
Well, in the support information that you have provided, on one, it talks about, this is from Casey Lee of Consumers Energy, 8 lights, and then there is another repeat communication from Bob to Casey, and he talks about 12 fixtures.
Correct, and what they're showing in there is 8. I have not obtained information back from Miss Lee as far as the as this diagram, as this layout. So I can provide that to the board as I get that, but I do see that initially it was 12, the price was quoted for 12, and this is talking about 8.
Yeah. I'm concerned that the lights, the new lights, the better lights, are gonna end before we get to the entrance to the former base. And that area will not be properly lighted, and I think all of us in this room are aware of the traffic when there's a shift change at some of the industries there.
Oh, yeah.
You get a lot of cars, and it can be a little dangerous. And if the lighting only goes out part way and it doesn't cover the entrance to the former base, then we're not doing the job.
Yeah, this map is only showing us a short portion.
Yes.
This is a truncated area.
Yeah. So if we could just get a more complete map, and then we can look at it again.
Sure.
I do want to clarify here as far as my stance regarding F41 lighting to the public. This change is in no way to, I don't know, somehow limit or reduce the enhancement of F41 lighting. It's that the current lighting is a maintenance nightmare for us. It's very costly. For some reason, cars seem to be magnetically attracted to these light poles, and we end up missing some lights. So after years of contending with this, we can change the lighting so that it's much safer for both the off-road drivers and the lights themselves. And then relocate these lights to other areas of our town so that we can enhance those places. So this is merely for economy and to reduce the amount of labor we spend on lights that we could spend on other very important projects in the township. All right, any other comments regarding these lights?
I thought they were going to stagger them left to right, or are they going all down one side?
I think there's another map that shows
Left to
what
right.
poles these are coming off of, and there is an alternating pattern.
Yeah.
I don't know why this map
Doesn't
is
show
less
that.
detailed.
Yeah. It's contradictory to our other meetings and discussions about this topic.
Yeah.
So are we good on providing something for the next meeting?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, this one did not call for any kind of action, just review and comment. So the next item is a property sale of 205 East Dwight Street.
So the board was provided with the offer associated Real Estate One's documentation setting forth an offer of $6,500 to purchase the vacant lot at 205 East Dwight Street.
Any comments regarding this? All right, I will clarify that we did have a previous offer. However, that offer had contingencies on it that were pretty significant, whereas the second offer did not have those didn't have contingencies.
Perhaps the viewing audience and the live audience might want to know where 205 East Dwight Street really is, you know. You want me to
I
take
can
care of
show a
that?
picture of a map, but if you could describe it, please do.
Well, East White Street is anything between the lake and US 23. And it's in the final block before you get to the beach. On the left-hand side, as you're heading toward the water, there is one vacant lot there. Houses on both sides. I don't know how big the lot is, but it's normal size. Left-hand side between Lake Street and the water. So,
Left-hand side would be the north side of the road.
yes.
Okay. Any comments? Is there a motion?
I move that we go ahead and accept this offer presented to us by Real Estate One of $6,500 for the lot at 2005 East White Street.
Support.
Motion by Mr. Byer, support by Mr. Gieske.
I might add that it only has an actual number because there used to be a house there. It's a vacant lot, and vacant lots usually don't have numbers, house numbers, but this one had a house on it. I don't know how long ago that disappeared, but it was 2005, and the assessor told me that if somebody builds another house, it will be 2,000 or 205.
205.
Yeah.
All right, roll call.
Mr. Byer,
Yes.
Mr. Cummings,
Yes.
Mr. Nordine, yes. Mr. Palmer,
Yes.
Mr. Gasky, Ms. McGuire,
Yes.
Mr. Weed.
Yes, motion's passed. Next, amendment to ordinance number 165, section 3.4 for food trucks and mobile vending units. I'm sorry, can we back up? Back to the real estate portion of this. I would also like to make a motion for our real estate contractor to set the appropriate pricing for each property we have for sale under their contract. As long as it's dealing with an increase in price, any decrease in price will need to be approved through the board.
Support.
Motion by Mr. Weed, support by Mr. Cummings. Roll call?
Mr. Palmer,
Yes.
Mr. Byer,
Yes.
Ms. McGuire,
Yes.
Mr. Cummings,
Yes.
Mr. Gasky,
Yes.
Mr. Nordine, yes. Mr. Weed.
Yes, motion's passed. Another motion I'd like to make is that language in our property listings is to be set to allow additional offers per property until the township board makes a decision on an offer.
Support.
Motion by Mr. Weed, support by Mr. Palmer. Roll call?
Mr. Nordine, yes. Mr. Palmer,
Yes.
Ms. McGuire,
Yes.
Mr. Byer,
Yes.
Mr. Cummings,
Yes.
Mr. Gasky,
Yes.
Mr. Weed.
Yes, motion's passed. Those two are just to clarify our language. All right, now on to food trucks and mobile vending units.
Okay. In the packet, you will see from zoning administrator Gansey, after the 30-day wait of the planning commission, that was, the planning commission unanimously voted on May 7th, and the proposed ordinance sections were set forth, were sent to the county on May 9th. So this is now 30 days after that was sent, and there were no objections to our food truck ordinance. And so you will see in the packet the details of section 6.34, establishing food trucks for mobile food vending.
All right, any comments?
I'm really happy to see that this has been presented to us. I think that'll bring folks who work at Coletta and other locations that have short lunches an opportunity to get food instead of having to run out and bring it back to the office and not have time to eat it.
Well, and also point out that this is becoming a very popular thing around not only Michigan but the country, where communities will have food truck roundups where they'll bring in 20 or 30 food trucks. I think our new superintendent mentioned that they have one down in Ohio that he had attended. If you want to speak a little bit about that.
They're very popular for festivals, and so it's attracting people. They're offering a lot more varieties than just kind of sandwiches. They're actually kind of getting to the gourmet option where people are very, very much enjoying that. So it's a trendy thing to do, and this now allows us to be able to have those type of mobile vending units in Oscoda, so they can be part of future celebrations.
Yes.
Or community events.
And I think our Furtaw Field would be a perfect location for one of these food truck roundups, by the way. So.
Yeah, I think this is a great opportunity to service our working people who need to grab something quick and to add to our variety of food in the area. All right, is there a motion?
Do we have a correct number for this amendment to ordinance, or doesn't it need a number? I'm looking at the agenda. Under resolutions and ordinances, number 1 is what we're talking about.
Yeah, I think the section of the ordinance would be 6.34.
Okay. Okay. Same ordinance number.
Yes, 165.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
We only have one ordinance.
All right, well, then I move that we accept ordinance number 165, section 6.34, food trucks, mobile vending, food vending units.
Support. Motion by Mr. Cummings, support by Mr. Weed. Roll call?
Mr. Gaske,
Yes.
Ms. McGuire,
Yes.
Mr. Byer,
Yes.
Mr. Nordine, yes, Mr. Palmer,
Yes.
Mr. Cummings,
Yes.
Mr. Weed.
Yes, motion's passed. Next, Resolution 2018-11, replacing the authorized representative for the SAW grant agreement.
Right, and what you will see in your packet is the SAW grant total amount that's over $937,000, and all this is doing is now allowing myself as a new superintendent to be able to sign the drawdowns on this. So previously, the prior superintendent was signing off on all these, and this is needs formal legislation to be able to enact my signature on these future drawdowns on this project.
Any comments?
Yeah. I hate to be the numbers police, but in my packet, that
Yes, I see what you're saying.
11 and
numbers
It
don't
says
line up.
1-3 instead of 11.
And I guess we're used to seeing Robert F. Stalker II. Do you want your name to be Dave on this resolution? Or
Dave
David?
Schiffer.
No, I'll keep it Dave.
Okay. Okay.
Is the correct resolution number 2006? Okay, so 13 on the document itself is wrong.
Correct.
Okay. Then I move that we adopt resolution number 2018-11 with the amendment so mentioned regarding the correction of the number.
Support.
And on the actual document, it has to be changed to 11 from 13.
Right.
That's the one I mentioned, yep.
All right.
No, reverse it, Jim.
I think it's a
In the
switch of
document.
numbers.
That's the document.
He said 11 to 13.
First of all, we have a motion by Mr. Cummings, support by Ms. McGuire. Regarding these, the next resolution on here says 11. So I think it looks like what's in the agenda is incorrect.
Oh.
13,
No, 13 is the licensing fees.
yeah.
Yeah, the document numbers are mixed up.
Okay, so we have two 13s.
And
So it's supposed to be
2
11,
11s.
like Dave said.
All right, yep. Sorry about that.
yeah,
Roll call.
Mr. Gasky,
Yes.
Ms. McGuire,
Yes.
Mr. Cummings,
yes.
Mr. Byer,
Yes.
Mr. Nordine, yes, Mr. Palmer,
Yes.
Mr. Weed.
Yes, motion's passed. Next, resolution, skip the number, appointment of a civil infraction officer.
So, this is appointment of the civil infraction officer. This is to be able to provide the civil infraction officer with the actual enforcement capability to write tickets. This is the boat launch attendant, the part-time position that will be at the both the boat launch at the Van Etten Lake, as well as the Foot Pond.
Any comments?
Yes, I recall from our work session on Friday that we were going to add an additional paragraph that cleaned up prior civil infraction officers that we have granted this permission to, and basically removed that authority from all prior in order to give it to the new civil infraction officer, but I do not see that paragraph here.
You want to make that a condition of the motion?
Sure. And then I'll move to accept the civil infraction officer, the resolution pertaining to the civil infraction officer in front of us tonight. Number to be determined?
12.
Number 12, okay,
Yeah.
good, so 2018-12.
Yeah, it needs to be changed formally.
Very good, and with the change to rescind the authority from all prior civil infraction officers before we award it to the new one.
Support.
Motion by Mr. Cummings, support by Ms. McGuire.
May I ask a question? To rescind all previous civil enforcement officers in this position, because we have them in other areas throughout the township.
Correct.
Correct. So I just
Fair
wanted
enough,
to-
yes, thank you. If that's another title. All right.
Roll call?
Mr. Byer,
Yes.
Mr. Gasky,
Yes.
Ms. McGuire,
Yes.
Mr. Cummings,
Yes,
Mr. Palmer,
Yes.
Mr. Nordine, yes, Mr. Weed.
Yes, motion's passed. Next, resolution 2018-13, authorizing a new zoning license permit fee for mobile vending units.
All right, so what this will do is detail the fee schedule for issuance and zoning of land use regulation permits. And what it does, it details there is a $20 daily fee, $300 for 30-day $800 for a 120-day fee, and then $1,200 for an annual fee.
Any comments?
I think that's 600 for 120 days.
I'm sorry. 600, I stand corrected.
Is there a
Is that per
motion?
truck?
Oh, go
Per
ahead.
truck.
Is that per truck?
Yes,
Because you could have more than one truck.
yes.
Okay.
It does say vending unit.
Yeah.
And by the way, ordinance in that second paragraph is spelled wrong.
My apologies.
Mr. Palmer, you handle the accounting, I'll handle the proofreading.
Okay.
I think the way it's spelling is ammunition, right?
I think so.
Weapons.
Anything else? Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion that we accept resolution number 2018-13.
Support.
Motion by Ms. McGuire, support by Mr. Palmer. Roll call.
Ms. McGuire,
Yes.
Mr. Cummings,
Yes.
Mr. Gasky,
Yes.
Mr. Nordine, yes, Mr. Palmer,
Yes.
Mr. Byer,
Yes.
Mr. Weed.
Yes, motion's passed. Next is the 4th of July Parade Grand Marshal. I'm recommending that Diana London, for her contributions to our community, taking care of our local volunteers, and running our library so well. I have also coordinated with Oscoda Township, and they are in agreement with this, since she has also done a significant amount of community work for them. So I make a motion that we designate Diana London as our 4th of July Grand Marshal for the 2018 parade. Any comments? Motion by Mr. Weed, support by Mr. Cummings. Roll call.
Mr. Cummings,
Yes.
Ms. McGuire,
Yes.
Mr. Gasky,
Yes.
Mr. Palmer,
Yes.
Mr. Nordine, yes, Mr. Byer,
Great choice. Yes, yes.
Mr. Weed.
Yes, motion's passed. Yes, very well deserving. Next, 4th of July Community Celebration, at the Oscoda Beach Park.
So, this is a letter to the township supervisor from both the Rotary Club and the Lions Club. And this is a requesting property use for the 4th of July community picnic and celebration. So it details out all of the amenities that are going to be provided to the community, and with a starting time at 5 p.m.
Any comments?
Are there any insurance requirements that go along with this? Is that, I mean, we've done
I
this.
think we've discussed that before, and I don't remember now. I'll check into that.
Do you remember? You've indicated you've done this 3 or 4
I
years.
don't know about the Lions, but the Rotary Club is covered through, because of the food and the fact that we are a service organization, we have a national insurance policy
Okay,
that covers.
Same with the Lions.
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
think Lions do.
okay,
both groups do.
great, good.
Ta-da. Excellent.
Is there a motion?
Yeah, I move that we go ahead with this request from the 2 service clubs to use the Oscoda Beach Park on the 4th of July.
Support.
Motion by Mr. Byer, support by Ms. McGuire. Roll call?
Ms. McGuire,
Yes.
Mr. Cummings,
Yes.
Mr. Byer,
Yes.
Mr. Nordine, yes, Mr. Gasky,
Yes.
Mr. Palmer,
Yes.
Mr. Weed.
Yes, motion's passed. Next is Downtown Development Authority Board Member Removal. According to the Oscoda Downtown Development Authority bylaws, they state a member of the authority may be removed from office for inefficiency, neglect of duty, misconduct, malfeasance, unexcused absence from 3 consecutive regularly scheduled meetings by the Township Board of Trustees. Andrea Mosley had served faithfully on the DDA board up until August of 2017, and since that time, she has not been present at the DDA meetings, and I've attempted to make contact several times with no response. So due to not receiving a letter of resignation, and in following the DDA bylaws, I'm requesting the Board of Trustees, I'll make this motion, I make a motion, the Board of Trustees approve removing Andrea Mosley from the DDA board effective immediately.
No response.
No. I have not had a response.
I have the letter of, resignation letter that we need to bring to the DDA meeting tomorrow.
Okay, then I shall rescind my motion and present the letter of resignation at our next regularly scheduled board meeting. Any other comments? All right, the next the GAC plant facilitating easements. Our attorney had contacted the Air Force regarding an easement. They agreed to his conditions with a couple of changes, just minor changes, at least on our part, they're minor changes. This easement specifically pertains to the piping that will run from the GAC plant to the extraction curtains. This is not pertaining to the sewer access. Are there any comments regarding that? All right, then I make a motion to approve the easement agreement for the Air Force to install pipeline from the GAC plant to the extraction field, contingent on the Air Force completing property description and surveys of the line locations. This also is contingent that the Oscoda Wordsmith Airport Authority approve the same.
Support.
Motion by Mr. Weed, support by Mr. Byer. Roll call.
Mr. Palmer,
Yes.
Mr. Byer,
Yes.
Ms. McGuire,
Yes.
Mr. Cummings,
Yes.
Mr. Gasky,
Yes.
Mr. Nordine, yes, Mr. Weed.
Yes, motion's passed. Next, the ICRC local road improvement agreements for Colbath and Alexander roads.
Okay, what you have in your packet there, it is signed by the Road Commission for your review, and this is both for the previously discussed improvements to Colbath Road and Alexander Road, and what it has in there, upon completion of the work as described, the Township of Oscoda will reimburse the Iosco County Road Commission the amount of $26,689.16.
Any comments?
This work is going to be done this year.
Yes.
Correct?
Yep.
Yes.
All right, is there a motion?
The board should know that we are going back to Alexander. That project was last year, but we're going back because the seal coat, chip and seal, whatever you want to call it, proved to be a little lightweight, even in 1 year, one winter of snow plowing and stuff. So we're gonna come up with a more substantial fix for that, but it's gonna cost, so.
Okay, is there a motion?
I'll make the motion that we approve Colbath and Alexander Road improvements.
Support. Motion by Mr. Gieske, support by Mr. Weed. Roll call?
Mr. Nordine, yes. Mr. Palmer,
Yes.
Ms. McGuire,
You have to do them separately, or we can do them together?
That's a good point. We should do them separately.
We should break down the amount separately then.
It's true, we do have it together. It will be one project.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. All right, please continue.
together.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mr. Byer,
Yes.
Mr. Cummings,
Yes.
Mr. Gasky,
Yes.
Mr. Weed.
Yes, motion's passed. I would like to make one more motion regarding property purchase near the 8,000 area. What is the address for that property? The old EDC building.
The address?
Don't know.
All right, we'll designate as the old EDC building. Make a motion that we grant our superintendent authority to negotiate finalizing the sale of the property.
Okay. Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Did we need to add it to the agenda?
I'm not sure. It is an item that we did talk about at a previous agenda, so. Either way, we need to facilitate this in a timely manner.
Okay.
Is there support?
Support.
Motion by Mr. Weed, support by Mr. Gieske.
Just to clarify, I have no problem with this issue being on the agenda, or was making a decision on it, just occurred to me. All right.
Any comments regarding the motion? Roll call?
Mr. Gasky,
Yes.
Ms. McGuire,
What was the motion? I'm sorry, I was looking. at the
Motion to
wrong thing.
grant the township superintendent authority to negotiate finalizing the sale of the property that has the old EDC building.
Oh, okay, yes.
Mr. Cummings,
Yes.
Mr. Byer,
Yes.
Mr. Nordine, yes. Mr. Palmer,
Yes.
Mr. Weed.
Yes, motion's passed.
Can we go back to the road thing? The whole
Yes.
26,000 was just for the one road, just so you know.
Oh, was it?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm sorry, the Alexander Road
Right.
is separate.
Separate. One
What
was
you'll see-
26 and the other
Oh,
one
the
was
other one's
16.
If you
Okay.
look at page 156 of the PDF, it does have the second for Alexander Road. The Colbath Road was the 26,000, and the Alexander Road is 16,000.
Yeah.
16,924.99.
First motion for Colbath.
Yeah. For 26,000, whatever.
All right, I make a motion that we approve road improvements for Alexander Road in the amount of $16,924.99.
Support.
Motion by Mr. Weed, support by Mr. Byer. Roll call?
Mr. Byer,
Yes.
Mr. Gasky,
Yes.
Ms. McGuire,
Yes.
Mr. Cummings,
Yes.
Mr. Palmer,
Yes.
Mr. Nordine, yes. Mr. Weed.
Yes, motion's passed. All right, we are now on to our second public comment period. This one does not require a card to be filled out. Anyone may speak with a 4-minute time limit. Does anybody wish to speak? Yes, please introduce yourself when you come to the podium.
Robert Casier, Hillcrest Drive, Oscoda. I would just like to talk a little bit about, recently, the Oscoda Township Planning Commission had asked for sessions from the Michigan Association of Planners to bring educational classes to us here in Oscoda, and I just wanted to emphasize that, how well that went over. It was extremely good classes to take. It was involved planning essentials, planning and zoning essentials was the name of the class. The only thing I think that we were a little bit lacking in is, other than Jamie and Bill, they were the only two attendees from the Board of Trustees to that session. I would really like to see everybody attend these sessions because they are very important. We're timing them most times during the days. I understand busy schedules, but the way this class was organized and run, and the instructor and everything, was such a benefit to us. We could all learn from that. And that's all I would like. I'd like more of these in the future. So,
I will emphasize, I have attended several planning and zoning classes over the last 5 years.
from the Michigan Association of Planners brought into Oscoda Township, though, that's the benefit. And we actually came out ahead on it, so it didn't cost the township.
Yes, great work on the planning office organizing that.
And I would just like to mention that one of the goals we hope to achieve when we join the Michigan Association of Planners was to have these sessions here in our own backyard, and to hopefully have them look at our facility and on their own decide to bring some of these training sessions back. And that has actually happened. They've requested to have another training session on another topic in October, and we're kind of negotiating with them to get. We provide use of the facility, and they would give us some free admissions for some of our members. So there is another one that they're planning for October. They were very impressed with the Warrior Pavilion as a location for these types of classes, and it was a very, very informative class. I would echo Mr. Tasier's comments. I learned a great deal myself from that, and I think everybody that was there kind of said the same thing. So it's a beautiful location, and that was one of our hopes, is that someone would come in from some of these places and look at it and say, yeah, we'd like to have some more meetings here, and so that was accomplished.
And we had a lot of people from the surrounding municipalities attend this, some of which otherwise can't make it to the ones that are way downstate typically. And so them being more educated and more successful will make us also more successful. Does anybody else wish to speak? Yes.
I'd like to apologize before that I didn't welcome Dave to our township. I'd like to extend a warm welcome to you and thank you for relocating you and your family here, and we look forward to working with you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
I'm Joe Maxwell, and Chairman of the DDA, and I'd like to clarify a couple things. When you made the motion about accepting the letter from the state of Michigan, their letter of intent, what that boils down to is if that building that we're working on now, the old Oddfellows home, is ever sold, we have to pay back the money that they loaned us.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what that's about. So they retain that interest forever.
Yep.
There's no time limit on it or anything else. They also will send inspectors up here after it's open. The final date is June 30th. It's supposed to be done by June 30th. The contractor tells me, even though we had a few hitches, that we didn't get the water and gas until last week, all at once. And so they worked without heat in the wintertime. But they say they're going to be done by the 30th. We're planning on an open house in the third week of July. We had originally planned on doing it in June, same time as Art Fair, but decided to put it off. That wouldn't put not quite as quick a timetable on us. But if you haven't been in the building or haven't been over there, take a look. It's really coming along. The floor, you wouldn't believe, it's a 100-year-old floor, and looks really nice. So it's really coming along. And we kept all the old tin that was inside. Doesn't look 100 years old because it's all been repainted and fixed up and everything, but it's still there, as much as we could say.
You're talking about ceiling tiles
Ceiling and wall.
and walls.
Wall, mostly wall. We saved as much as we could, or the contractor did. A lot of it was ruined, especially in the ceiling, because there'd been so many leaks in the building. But saved as much as we could. So they used as much as they could all throughout it. So.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is anybody else?
The GAC unit was mentioned a couple of times tonight. The one that's just on the next block over that has a deadline of August 1st by the DEQ permit. And our supervisor talked about the agreements that have been signed and or being in the process of being totally approved and signed for the access of the curtain and on that side. This, but specifically did not include the storm sewer. So my question is, what is the status of the agreement or agreements necessary between the township and the Air Force for the storm sewer? Because it's only 50 days away. And as I mentioned the last meeting, there's 500,000 gallons of water, 1,000 parts per trillion of PFAS that contaminates our fish and makes them less healthy to eat. And that's a lot of water. That's every day, 500,000 gallons. So I'm concerned that we don't have, and I'm not saying it's your fault or the Air Force fault or the DEQ's. Is there a plan so that it will be signed and it will not delay?
We are in process. We are having legal discussions and working out a lot of technical details. And I hope by the next meeting, if not earlier, we will have that resolved, at least on the township's part.
Okay, then as co-chair on the community side, is there anything that we can do? Is there anything that the Air Force is not providing you?
No,
And have they given you a deadline that unless it's finished by a certain date, it will start adding time?
they have not.
They have not. And have you asked?
We have not.
Well, I hope that discussion happens quickly. That's very critical. Thank you.
Anybody else? All right, then on to board comment. Anybody have anything?
I have an issue on the 4th of July celebration at the beach. Previous years, there was a lineup at the bathhouse for a half hour to use the bathhouse or longer. Last year, they put 4 porta potties in, normal, and 1 handicapped with a wash basin. Just wondering if we're going to do that this year or not.
I don't know. I can get research and.
Oscoda Septic supplied it. I can't remember what he charged us, 500 or something like that. But it solved the problem.
Oscoda.
Septic.
Yep.
73948.
7394000.
But it solved the problem where there's only down to about 10 minutes wait instead of a half hour, 40-minute wait. When you get 5,000 people down there, there's only 4 facilities, so
The year before that,
it was
or
bad.
2 years, they ran out of toilet paper.
Paper and everything.
That was even
bad.
worse. So.
So this was 4
Just for the 4th of July. night.
and on that day,
That
that
day.
Saturday.
Yeah.
It's for the event.
Good point, Martin.
Anybody have anything else?
Yeah, I have a question, not a comment. Did I hear that those of you that were at the RAB meeting, whether you sat up here or in the audience, did I hear this correct, that Mr. Mars, who represents the Air Force, I don't know how serious, but suggested that maybe some of the chemical pollution in Van Etten Lake might be seeping into that lake from Cedar Lake? Did I dream that?
Correct.
And which meeting was that? When was
The
that?
current rapid,
The last
Current
meeting.
one.
yeah,
And it's on video?
Yes.
yeah. I live on Cedar Lake Road.
said
The
that he-
outlet is at the north end.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
I did not hear that. I'm saying it wasn't said that way.
I did.
Yeah.
He said he got the information from old USGS maps.
He must have had them upside down.
Well,
Yeah,
like I said, I know I'm not perfect, but that is definitely a clarification that has to be asked and corrected if
Yeah.
necessary. And what basis was it? I have a call with them tomorrow. I'm gonna ask them that
Yeah.
one.
There is a facility that was put in on the southeast Lake Huron side that if the water is extra high, there are some houses that have a flooding problem. And there are some underground works there that will take care of that, but the water goes to Lake Huron.
That's right. The drain commissioner operates those
Yeah,
ditches.
exactly. And that's only used on rare occasions, certain years and so forth.
Right.
Yeah. But there's no drainage to, I don't even know the lake levels, whether you've got a situation with water going uphill or down, or, did you have a chance to check that out?
I have not checked that.
That demarcation of the two watersheds, Lake Huron versus
Yeah,
Van Etten Lake, is a moving target depending on the lake,
Yeah.
the level of Cedar Lake and the swamp, and my sump pump in my house. I can verify that. But that's a statement that we want to address. If it's on the video, I'll make sure, and hopefully the reviewers of the minutes will make sure that it's.
Is this guy just desperately looking for reasons why the Air Force is blameless for anything? Yeah,
yes.
He was referring to the six identified new plumes between Cedar Lake and Van Etten Lake. That's what his references were from,
no,
and there's no flow going that way.
no.
He was referring to underground too, not necessarily.
Yeah, because I've never seen any discussion on the map that shows any plumes going from Cedar Lake to Lake Huron. There's some dots where the DEQ briefed where they
Six of
found some PFAS, but they don't know what caused it. I mean, it's little dots, like one lot, but they don't know where it came from. I saw that. So, anyone want to volunteer to help me look at the video and get that statement? And some people have had recollection, but I missed it for some reason.
Well, I'm getting it secondhand, so I.
Well, you get verification that something was said
Yeah.
about that. No, I know.
And Mr. Byer is part of the Cedar Lake Improvement Board, so he's Mr. Byer is part of the Cedar Lake Improvement Board. He represents us on that board, and
Right, and I know Rex Vaughn for the last 7 years. So I can ask him.
Sure.
all right, anybody have anything else?
Me, this Saturday is just a reminder, is the drop-off program at Sunrise Disposal. You can still pick up your permits in the treasurer's office. You need to buy them ahead of time. You can't buy them at the site. It's $10. You need to be a resident of Oscoda Township or own property. Fill out the permit, take your driver's license and the permit with you. You can go as many times as you want to for $10. There's a list of things that you can and cannot bring. If you have any questions about it, please call our office at 739-7471.
Thank you. Anything else? I would like to welcome Mr. Schaefer, our new superintendent, who for only 7 or 8 days of training and never being to one of our board meetings, I think did pretty good.
Very good. Thank you. Try to get my numbers better for the resolutions next time.
Thank you and welcome to your new home.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, then I need a motion to adjourn.
So
So
moved.
moved.
Motion by Mr. Gajewski.
So, yeah, cut in on it.
We are now adjourned. Thank you for coming.